Afternoon, and welcome to the happy Valentine's meeting of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities Commissions. Beth, we've not met you in person, but it's welcome. And
thank you.
This is typically when you would call the roll, please.
Okay. Chair Randall Tuttle.
I am here.
Vice Chair Wesley Curtis.
Present.
Commissioner Harold Eustache. You're muted.
Present. Sorry.
Commissioner Harold Day.
Present.
Commissioner Tom Griffin.
Present.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines. Commissioner Hugh Jernigan.
Present.
Commissioner Dwayne Long.
Present.
Commissioner Chris Parker.
Here.
Commissioner Charles Wilson.
Present.
Commissioner Alan Younger.
I think Mr. Younger might said he was not going to be able to join us today. Now that
Okay.
He did, that's correct.
that's right.
Okay, cool. And before we begin our normal meeting, I'd like to again obviously welcome Harold. Harold and I had a nice conversation a week and a half ago or so, and I'd ask Harold to tell everybody just a little about yourself, less than a minute, please, and then we're going to go around the room for the commissioners and ask you to do the same for Harold, please.
Randall, before you start, before you start, Harold, somebody's got a lot of feedback in the background.
Yeah, thank you, Wesley. So why don't we mute everybody, mute please if you're not talking. And then Harold, take it away.
Can everybody hear me? All right, thank you, Randall. So my name's Harold Eustache. I am a criminal defense attorney here in Winston-Salem. As you can see, I'm in a restaurant today. I'm in Superior Court in Wilkes County, but typically I practice all over in Forsyth and Guilford and various other counties. I was formerly an assistant district attorney, a prosecutor here in Forsyth County, as well as Rockingham County. Before, the law stuff, I was in the military, I was in the Army, went to Iraq and Afghanistan both, and happy to be here with you. So thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we go in the order that we called the roll? So Wesley, could you share a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Harold, how you doing? This is Wesley. Wesley Curtis. I'm an architect here in Winston-Salem. I've been in Winston-Salem for the past 30, 40 years, practicing architecture. I have a firm with Walter Robbs, Callahan and Pierce. I was president last year, moved to chairman of the board this year, and a member of the community and a lot of activities, and been here for a while. So glad to have you on board.
Thanks, Wesley. Mr. Day.
Harold Day, own a painting contractor business for 58 years going on. I've been in Winston-Salem for 75 good years of my life, and I've enjoyed calling this place home.
Thank you, Mr. Day.
Glad to meet you.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes, Tom Griffin. I'm a registered engineer. I work for forensic engineering and community. Have been here in Winston since 1971, and welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Ms. Hines. You're muted, Yvonne.
Got me? You hear me?
Yes.
Yvonne Hines, native Virginian, former public school and university educator. I am a local clergy now, and I do conflict resolution for congregations.
Glad to meet you, Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Yvonne. Hugh Jernigan.
Welcome, Harold. This is Hugh Jernigan. I am retired from 44 years in different environmental regulatory agencies. I feel lucky that I worked a lot with waste treatment plants, water treatment plants, and landfills in the past. So I feel very comfortable being this, and I welcome. Good to see you.
Glad to meet you.
Thanks you. Mr. Long.
Hey, Harold, welcome. Dwayne Long. I own an insurance agency in Kernersville, North Carolina. Grew up in North Carolina, and except for about 20 years as a prodigal son, came back and have been here most of my life. Welcome to the Utilities Commission.
Thanks, Dwayne. Mr. Parker.
Hey, Harold, good to see you again. We've spent some time talking over the phone, so short and sweet. I take care of old people. Welcome to the commission.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Mr. Parker.
Thanks, Chris. Mr. Wilson.
I'm Charles Wilson, born and raised in Winston-Salem. Went away for college and grad schools for some time, but I moved back close to 10 years ago and work in commercial real estate. We own some office properties and in downtown and elsewhere in Winston-Salem. Oh.
Good to meet you.
Thanks, Charles. And Harold, I think you know Alan Younger. So we're missing Alan, but at least that's one that you know, so we don't have to hear from him. So on behalf of all the commission, welcome. We look forward to working with you. Courtney, hand it back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen. Okay, we have a lot to go over today, so we'll go ahead and just jump right in. I've got a few announcements that we'll get to next. We have Kirk Erickson, who's here with us. He's the Assistant Planning Director. He's going to give a 2020 census and growth presentation for the commission today. And then Bill Brewer is our water treatment manager, and he is on the call, I believe. I didn't see him earlier, but he should be here. He's given a Weaver fertilizer plant update. And then we'll do our normal water and wastewater and solid waste updates. We'll present the agenda items, and then if there's time, we'll get to our CIP update. So we started with some introductions earlier. As you know, we have a new utility commission member, which is Harold Eustache. He was sworn in this past Tuesday, so it was February the 8th. He came to our offices and we swore him in. So he's officially on the board. As you know, I sent out an email to introduce you to Beth Broom, who's the new Senior Administrative Assistant and is the recording clerk for the Utility Commission. There is a new budget director. He's the Budget Performance Management Director, Scott Tesh, and he'll be with us until he hires the budget analyst who will be responsible for the utilities department, who used to be Heather Curry, and she left at the end of last year. And then we have a new purchasing director, Chantel McClam, who's joining us today. And she was promoted into that position, replacing Jerry Bates. Chantel was previously the CityLink director, so she's not new to the city or to utilities, just new in her role. And then Marilena Jensen-Guthold is our assistant city attorney. As you know, Marilena has worked with us as our city attorney for many years, but utilities budgeted a dedicated attorney just in this current year. And Marilena has officially been transferred into utilities as a utilities employee. And so we will have her all to ourselves, and she will focus just on utility related matters. So we're really excited to have her join our team, or as again, she was part of our team, but now she's just going to be dedicated to utility matters. So those are a couple of introductions that I wanted to make. As you know, Mike Corvisto went to the budget office, so I've made some organizational changes that I just want to run, just inform the commission of. But before I do that, I have some slides. So let me jump that first, skip over that for just a second, and I'll come back to that. We currently have 74 departmental vacancies. We're still struggling with vacancies like many industries out there are doing right now. We've got hiring campaigns going on. The city council in January approved reclassifications and some pay band adjustments for some of our harder to fill positions, such as our equipment operator positions. They adjusted the pay band for those. There were several engineering positions that they adjusted the pay band for. The HR is working on a hiring incentive bonus structure to use, or policy to use, for hard to fill positions. So hopefully we'll be able to use that fairly soon. So we're doing what we can to try to meet the needs and continue to provide the level of service that we need to for our customers. But we definitely are struggling right now. We're also, the city manager's office has also asked us to look at opportunities to contract out services if we find that, you know, there's a way that we can contract those that work out, to look at that. So basically just look at every option that we have right now.
Courtney,
Yes.
this is Chris. On that 74 departmental vacancies, if we were to flash backwards to, say, year 18 or 19, what would we have been seeing as far as vacancies at that point in time?
I don't know the exact number, but we're definitely more. This is the highest I think I've ever seen it.
Chris,
Okay.
I seem to recall that we typically run about, and don't hold me to this, but roughly 30-ish vacancies.
Yeah, that's
Courtney,
what
is
I
that
was.
seem- And
that
so
was
this
what I was
feels like
thinking in my
about
head.
double the vacancies.
Okay.
And what
And-
we're learning is it's hard to make any headway. We hire somebody, but then we'll lose somebody. We hire somebody, and it's a kind of a constant thing right now. So please, you know, it's impacting our operations staff the most, and they're really working hard to continue to provide the level, or to provide services, you know, to the point that they can, but they're definitely down on resources. So
Cool. Courtney, what are we doing with overtime? Is it intense? Are we at the risk of losing some folks because they're having to work so much?
that is one of the problems. I mean, our employees they do get overtime, you know, ones that are not salaried, and they, but there is burnout. I mean, you know, you can only work so much without, you know, you need a break. So we're really trying to monitor that, which is one of the reasons why we temporarily closed Old Salisbury Road, you know, just so that we're not working people so long. I mean, we have thresholds. We can't work people by so much anyway, but even if you stay below those thresholds, you know, still people can be burnt out. So we're definitely trying to monitor that and make sure they don't. So we're underway with the budget kickoff for FY23. Our staff is working on pulling those numbers together, and we will start budget meetings with the commission soon. You know, we usually present the capital budget somewhere in the end of March timeframe. So I will be working with Mr. Tuttle and Mr. Parker to schedule those meetings soon. And I just wanted to let you know the challenges. I mean, we've talked about this, but it's going to be a challenging year. We have to deal with our pay. We're going to account for, you know, the higher pay, where we increase some pay bands for those hard to fill positions. So that will be in there. Our chemical costs are going up, material costs are going up, construction prices are going up. So these are all things that we're going to have to take into consideration when we're putting the budget together, and also balancing that with our rate setting. So, you know, I know you're all aware of this, but just wanted to put that back out there, that it will be a challenging year for us. A reminder, we have a cost of service study meeting next Tuesday, February 22nd at 3 p.m. It will be virtual. You should have received an invite from Beth. And if you did not receive that invite, then reach out to her and she'll send it to you. But it will be to go over the cost of service. You know, we had the first part of that where we set our objectives. The commission set the objectives. And this will be a follow-up meeting about how those objectives relate to the rate setting that we're getting ready to enter in, to start going through. Next, the Highway 65 Waterline extension. This was a previous commission member was very interested in extending water on Highway 65. And so I wanted to share this with the full commission that the city of Winston-Salem did receive ARPA funds through the state to go towards this project. So it was $3.1 million that was allocated to the city of Winston-Salem for this particular project. And we will be working with Forsyth County on this particular project to get a water line extended on Highway 65. So I wanted to update you on that. And then there continues to be programs in place to provide financial assistance for our water and sewer customers that need help paying their water bills. And we've seen that several of those programs have provided funding for many of our customers. So I think that's going well. And there is a request for additional funds from the state for those programs. So they continue to be a good thing. Real quickly, before I turn it over to Kirk, I talked about organizational changes, and I really just want to highlight 3 positions that we are going to be adding soon. So this is a high-level picture of our org structure and organizational structure. And previously, we had 1 deputy director and 2 assistants. Going forward, we're going to have 2 deputy directors and 2 assistants. The 2 deputy directors will split the water and sewer operations. Those are the biggest part of our department, have the most employees and largest operational budget. So 1 has been advertised, and it will be responsible for the water and wastewater treatment and safety programs for the department. Mike Sober has been promoted into the other one, and he will be responsible for meter services, technology, our utilities, field operations, and our capital projects group. And then Jan's, one of our assistant director, her division, it remains unchanged. She's over the solid waste division. And then the other assistant director position will be business services. So they will focus on our finances, budget, customer service, billing, strategic initiatives, that area. And then the other position under the assistant utilities director position, there's 1 more position that will be advertised once the assistant director is filled. And that will be an administrative services manager who will manage our finance, budget, customer service, and billing areas. So there'll be some new faces coming up pretty soon. Any questions on that?
Courtney, I got a question on that 65 deal. How many miles of pipe is that? Do you know offhand?
I know it's over a mile, but I cannot remember the exact mileage. Mike, do you remember?
It's like 2 miles, a little over 2 miles. I
Okay.
believe.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And with that, I'm gonna pull up Kirk's presentation. And so again, Kirk Erickson is with us. He's an assistant planning director for planning and development services. And he's coming to give us a presentation on the 2020 growth trends and utility impacts as part of the census data that was received. So I'm going to share my screen again, and then Kirk, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Courtney. And while she's getting that set up, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about today. As I'm sure most of you all are aware, every 10 years, the U.S. Census Bureau conducts the decennial census, and that's always a really good time to look at where the community is in relation to our peers, look at national population trends, things of that nature, and also see what policy implications we can derive from those. So what I'm going to do is start with national trends, then go down to state trends, local trends in Forsyth County, and finally talk about implications for our city county sewer system. When Courtney and I were kind of scoping about this presentation, we decided that was where the brunt of the issues with growth and development relied to. Our water system is actually pretty good in terms of serving the folks it needs to serve. And certainly we have a lot of excess capacity based on some of the heavy water users and industries that we used to have in our region that we no longer have. And I'm also going to end with some thoughts for the commission to consider going forward. But with that being said, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So this is a map showing the population of various states in the country. And in the last decade, the United States population increased by almost 23 million folks, which that's a huge increase when you just think about it in terms of absolute numbers. And the total US population as of 2020 was roughly 331 million people. The states with the largest populations are, of course, California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania and Illinois are both kind of on the cusp with that role, but currently Pennsylvania is rounding out the top 5. To no surprise of folks who've been in North Carolina for any amount of time, we've been growing as well, and we're currently the 9th most populated state. Next slide. That being said, despite those large absolute numbers, the US population grew at its second lowest rate of any decennial period since the census began in 1790 at a rate of 7.4%. The only period when growth was slower, in fact, was during the Depression era of 1930 to 1940, and it was only 1/10 of a percentage point lower. So we've got some slowing growth as a country, and analysts are pointing to the facts of an aging population, decreased fertility rates, and also reduced immigration from other countries as being the reasons for that slowdown. Next slide. So looking at this slide right here, we have the fastest and slowest growing states in terms of population over the last decade. See an interesting trend here and kind of what I would call the Intermountain West with Utah, Idaho, Nevada, and also, interestingly enough, North Dakota, I'm not sure what's behind that, and Texas is rounding out the top 5 fastest growing states. The slowest growing states were Connecticut, Michigan, Ohio, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania. And then we actually had 3 states that lost population in the last decade: Illinois, Mississippi, and West Virginia. Next slide, please. So I think this is the last slide on the national trends, but we've seen for some time now kind of an urban and rural divide in the country, with urban areas tending to gain population and rural areas continuing to lose residents. And based on that, roughly half of the US counties lost population between 2010 and 2020. And you can see that on this map here, you can see kind of the Appalachian communities in North Carolina, and also some of the communities down east had that population loss. But certainly here in Forsyth and in the Triad, we've been growing. Just to give you some broader perspective, the 5 counties with the most growth were those surrounding Houston, the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth area, Phoenix, Seattle, and Las Vegas. So again, lots of population growth in the Sun Belt and in the West. And in case anyone's curious, LA County is still the largest in the US with over 10 million residents. So that's really impressive. Next slide, please. So I want to go break down a little bit North Carolina's growth trends. And this map right here shows the rates of growth for various states. So you see some of the real high growers are places like Utah with over 18%, or Texas with almost 16%. We already talked about some of those states that were losing population at the very bottom end, West Virginia with 3.2%. North Carolina is definitely in the upper half in terms of population growth. Specifically, we had a rate that was the 15th highest of any state, which was enough for us to gain a congressional seat this time around, and that translated into 9.5% growth rate. But much like the trend I talked about for the US as a whole, this is our lowest growth rate of any decade since 1910, so in the past 100 years. That being said, our population is still about 10.5 people, so roughly the size of LA County, if you remember from that last slide. And the highest growth rates occurred in the Triangle, Charlotte, and Wilmington regions. Next slide. This is just kind of a visual representation of some of the things I was talking about. You can see those dark green areas are where population growth is the most significant. Again, there's major clusters in the Charlotte region, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Cary, and New Hanover and Wilmington, that area, with serious population declines in kind of the northeastern part of the state and kind of the more rural areas surrounding the big regions in North Carolina. Next slide. This slide here basically shows population growth for roughly the 20 largest counties in North Carolina by population. And we in Forsyth County are on the lower end of that continuum. We grew at around 9% during the last decade. We added roughly 32,000 people from a absolute numeric basis. Of course, that pales in comparison to Wake and Mecklenburg, which each added in the neighborhood of roughly 200,000 folks and had over 20% growth rates in terms of percentage points. Durham County is rapidly gaining on us in terms of its population growth. They had about double the population growth we had. Even some of the areas around Charlotte and Raleigh, such as Cabarrus County, north of Charlotte, and Johnson County, south of Wake, they were almost at 30% population growth. So we're growing, just not as fast as some of our peers. And certainly we have a lot to be proud of in the fact that we're not declining like some of our rural comparisons. Next slide. So now I'm going to get into some detailed information about Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. And this image here shows Forsyth County as the backdrop. The yellow line represents the Winston city limits, and the rest of the data is broken up into census tracts, which are the most detailed data we currently have available from the US Census Bureau. And as I mentioned on the last slide, Forsyth County's growth rate was about 9.1% in the last decade. Winston's was a little less at 8.7%. And as I mentioned, these are both less than our peer large cities and large counties in the state. Just as a roadmap for those keeping track at home, our population of roughly 250,000 makes us the 5th largest in the state after Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro, and then Durham. And our county population of a little over 380,000 makes us the 4th largest in the state behind Wake, Mecklenburg, and Guilford. Next slide, please. And we're going to get back to some of those, what those colors mean on the map. We're going to get back to that in just a minute. But before we do, I wanted to interject with a little discussion about the Legacy Growth Management Plan. And this is important to keep in mind when you consider where growth is going in the county and also how that growth is affected by our municipal city-county sewer system. So the Legacy Comprehensive Plan, it's our long-term guide for growth in Winston-Salem, in Forsyth County, and usually that comp plan is updated every 10 or 15 years or so. We're kind of at the end of the life cycle of our current comp plan. It was adopted in 2012 and 2013, and the county is currently divided into 5 kind of theoretical growth management areas, with more intense development proposed for those urban and suburban areas. On the slide here, basically the areas that are in shades of yellow are where that intense growth is proposed for, And the areas in the green are where it's intended to be future growth when services are available, or long-term conservation areas based on the challenges related to serving those areas with municipal services. And the growth areas are largely within the Muddy Creek Basin, which you all know is the sewer service footprint for Forsyth County. Next slide, please. So this is actually that same growth management map, and I overlaid the Muddy Creek Basin boundaries, which again, this is the area that drains to our city county utilities, treatment facilities by gravity, and you can see the vast majority of those suburban areas are within this basin. And again, just as a reminder, serving areas beyond this basin requires pumping sewage back over ridge lines and into the basin where it can go via gravity to our treatment facilities. Next slide, please. So this is the same image that I had a couple slides back, where it looks at census tracts in the county and talks about what growth rates they had. But rather than having the city limits boundary on here as it previously did, I wanted to look at this with the boundaries of the Muddy Creek sewer service basin, because I think that's important from a city county utility service perspective of where is our growth versus where is our existing infrastructure. So the red areas on this map are the areas of decline. The dark blue areas are the areas of greatest growth. In the last decade, growth in our county was really concentrated in three areas: the western and southern suburban ring around Winston-Salem, which I've kind of taken the red cursor and marked that, the downtown area and the area around Wake Forest University, and the area south of Kernersville, east of the Winston-Salem city limits, that some folks are calling the heart of the triad. Fortunately, most of this growth did occur in the sewerable basin. You can see there's a little bit west of Louisville and Clemens that was on things like package plants or private sewer or septic tank on smaller lots. Certainly some of that has occurred in the Union Cross area, but we've actually expanded sewer service to a large portion of that area. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, actually, did that? Okay, no, we're on the right slide, Courtney. I switched the order. So talking about, that was a broad snapshot of growth, but this looks at the density of growth. So again, you have kind of high density growth concentrated in the downtown and Wake Forest area. The yellow on the map is a real high density level of growth, which no surprise to folks who've seen the increase in student housing facilities in Wake in the last decade and the increase in downtown and adjacent neighborhoods. There was also a significant amount of high density suburban multifamily and single family growth in South Winston-Salem between Everett Road and the Peters Creek Parkway corridor. And also we see kind of the Clemens area and the Southeast Forsyth area making a show again of dense growth. Next slide. So this is the slide that I thought I had previous, but this is a slide that shows where population has actually declined. And the vast majority of the county has either had population growth or relatively stable population. Three areas did have growth of between, or negative growth, decline of between 7.5% and 15%. And those are the older suburban areas north of Winston-Salem, kind of the Bethania area, the eastern part of Ardmore next to Peters Creek Parkway, and also the East Winston, kind of eastern part of downtown and surrounding Winston-Salem State University. And part of the reasons for this decline is just a loss of some of the younger families in the Bethania area, folks kind of moving on, growing up, leaving the nest, and their families still owning the same house and just having less folks living there. in areas like the eastern part of Ardmore, you actually saw some units that had previously been multifamily conversions being converted back into single family residences. You saw kind of some reduction in apartments or similar facilities there. And in eastern Winston-Salem, right next to the downtown area, you saw kind of some temporary closures of multifamily facilities as that area goes through some reinvestment and development projects. If we could go to the next slide. So where does all this data leave us? What are the implications for the Utilities Commission to consider? So I think what we saw is that the densest growth in the county in the past decade, for the most part, was concentrated in the existing sewer service basin. So that's a good thing. That means that the policies of the commission and utility staff, planning staff, council, and the commissioners are all kind of in sync in terms of guiding growth to where we have basically municipal services to feed that growth. The areas of high growth outside the basin were found west of Clemens and Louisville and south of Kernersville. Again, I don't think those factors should be a surprise to anyone who has any time in this community. And some of that growth is at a density of development that doesn't make sense to serve with sewer, although it does provide kind of it shows there's an appetite in those areas to maybe consider some expansions. So the question that I would put forth to staff and the commission is, based on recent growth patterns, are there any areas within the existing sewer system that would benefit from upgrades or capacity expansions? I know Courtney's already shared with me some of those in the past, and you all are aware of those as well. Upsizing lines or putting in new expanded capacity pump stations, things of that nature, but all of that is on the table. And as I alluded to, it may also be worth exploring extending sewer to the high growth areas just beyond the Mighty Creek Basin. However, serving those areas would definitely be more costly due to the need for pumping sewage back into the basin for treatment. And that cost would ultimately have to be borne by someone. Usually that's the residents who live in the area currently, or someone who wants to bring that growth in the system to the area. But there's also other mechanisms available for funding that growth should leadership decide that. If we could go to our final slide. As I was mentioning, our legacy comprehensive plan is sort of at the end of its useful lifespan, and planning staff is going to be working on developing a new comprehensive plan starting in the upcoming fiscal year in the fall. And that will certainly contain a revised growth management map. As a result of some of the demand for new employment centers and housing that's going on in the county right now, as well as a shrinking number of developable sites in the existing sewer service area, we may be proposing expanding some of those suburban growth boundaries to areas that currently aren't served by sewer. If we get into that, we would certainly have a discussion on any implications to the sewer system with Courtney and her staff, and certainly you all would be made aware of that as well. And that'll all come out as part of the comp plan update process, but I do want to put that on the table. So that is it in terms of my presentation. I'm glad to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Kirk, very much. That was super interesting. And will you be able to share that with the commission or share with Courtney so she can share?
Absolutely. I'll PDF it and send it to Courtney so it'll be emailable.
That is great. That's great. Any questions from the commission?
Kurt, this is Wesley.
Mr. Curtis, good to speak to you, sir.
Yeah, good to see you again too. 2020 seemed like a long time, long ways away, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, you remember that Legacy 2030 update.
I do. I do. Good job, though. Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kirk. That was good information, and I'll share the presentation with the commission. I do want to add, just as a reminder, we did the commission just approved. I can't remember if it was December or a previous month, but we have a consultant working on our wastewater collection system master plan. So all of this data that Kirk presented today, as well as working with the planning department and their process, all those will be factors that we look at when we're developing our master plan for the next so many years. So where do we need more growth? Where do we need additional capacity? Where do we need new pipes? Things of that nature. So it's actually good timing that we're at that stage in our process as well. So. Okay, if there are no other questions, then I will share my screen again and we'll keep rolling.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kurt. Okay, up next is we wanted to, I know there's been a lot in the news about the Wilson Weaver fertilizer plant and everything that went on with that. Wanted to just update you about, the events that took place and how that impacts utilities. Obviously, there's been some things in the news about water quality that we just want to talk through. So Bill Brewer is with us today, and he's going to give us an update on this situation.
Thanks, Courtney. Good afternoon, everybody. And congratulations to all those folks that are transitioning into new roles. If you would go ahead and advance the slide. As Courtney mentioned, she wanted me to speak to the events that occurred the evening of the Weaver fire and also their impacts on us. Fortunately, there were no water quality impacts to Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Utilities water treatment plants or intakes. We did have one issue later on in the night, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, but it was inconsequential to the efforts of our emergency responders that evening. So there was a precautionary recreational water advisory. It was issued on February 3rd, and it was issued by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and also NCDEQ. And it was issued for Monarchus Creeks, Mill Creeks, both of which are tributaries to Muddy Creek. And then Forsyth County Department of Public Health also posted notices on February 5th of elevated chemicals from the runoff of that fire. And it was mainly nitrates, nitrites, phosphates, and chemicals of that nature that were in that plant. So if you would go ahead and advance, please. So this map, the dark blue line on the left-hand side is the Yadkin River. And you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner, the Northwest Dam is one of our intakes, and then further down on the Yadkin is Idles Dam. The Weaver fire is about the middle and top, with the red star with the white center. And the runoff went into Monarchus Creek, which ultimately ends up in Mill Creek, and then ultimately Muddy Creek, and then the Yadkin River below our Idles intake. So that's essentially the lay of the land as far as impacts from the runoff of that fire. And as I mentioned, it did not impact our operation at all. I did talk with DEQ Public Water Supply, and they did not issue any notices to utilities downstream of the confluence of Muddy Creek and the Yadkin. So if you could go ahead and advance. So this is just kind of a very brief rundown of what happened that night. At about 7:30, Swan noticed increased demand, so they went up on production. About 8:30, Courtney received a call from Chief Mayo of the Winston-Salem Fire Department. He was requesting assistance with pressure and supply. The only adjustments that we made to our system is our 15th Street pump station is on that side of town, and it normally fills at night about the time that they called. So we stopped that filling process and I had the operations group here at Swan turn a pump on, which helps with pressure on the eastern side of that pressure zone. Unfortunately for us, we did have an issue that did not impact the response to the fire, but it does impact our system. At about 11 p.m., the Tobaccoville tank that serves RJ Reynolds called for the 65 West pump station that's in Bethania to come on. And when that happened, when that pump turned on, we had a surge valve fail and blow the pipe out under the station. Fortunately, there are 2 stations that were built to serve RJ Reynolds, the Tobaccoville plant, and that zone. So we had a redundant station that basically took over. So there was no interruption to either our customers or the Weaver fire response. We have filed an insurance claim with Travelers Insurance, and we've been in communication with their representative. The city manager has signed an emergency declaration to allow us to bypass some of the purchasing regs and expedite repair of that station. And we've contacted and met with Black and Beach to start the process of assessing the damage to the station. The 65 pump station remains in service and it's supplying the 1140 zone. And we have a backup diesel driven pump there in the event of a power outage. So we can continue to supply them if Duke power supply or if our Duke power supply is interrupted. The cause of the failure is not known, but we're looking into it, and we're going to do an investigation to try and figure that out. My experience with situations like this is usually when something gives way like this, you have a weak point in the system, and an unusual situation kind of exposes that weak point. But as I mentioned, it's still a little too early to tell. We've got a lot of work to do to try to figure out what happened. So the next slide.
Bill, this is Chris. If I could just ask, so you don't really have an estimate on what the cost is going to be until Black and Beach does their assessment?
That's correct. So the picture on the left is when our maintenance staff showed up to the pump station after the surge valve failed. You can see the water running out the door. The picture in the middle is the actual surge valve. Now everything on the blue pipes, the 2 blue pipes that's brown, was underground. So you can imagine the force that it took to knock this thing out of the floor like that. Also, that yellow line that runs kind of diagonally, that's the glue from where the trim was on the floor. So the floor is actually dropped almost 3.5 feet. And then the picture in the lower right-hand corner is the back of the station. Until our staff got out and can turn the pumps off, we were pumping about 7.5 million gallons of water through the bottom of that station, basically. So you can go ahead and advance the slide.
Bill, do you also believe this is going to be covered by our insurance?
Yes, it is. They've already told us it is, and the engineering will be covered as well.
Good.
So, hey, Bill, I was going to ask a similar question. What makes this an insurance claim versus something else, some other failure?
Well, it's
does it have to do with the fire and the demand from the fire, or is it just, are we covered for this in normal circumstances?
Yes. We're not sure if it's related to the fire or not. It's a little too early to tell. But it is it is covered under the conditions of our policy. And I think it would be covered either way.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
So the picture on the left, this storage cabinet here just shows you the level of the water inside before our folks were able to turn those pumps off. And then the one on the right shows a little better magnitude of how far that floor has sunk. And I believe that is the last slide.
Yes, thank you, Bill. Does anybody have any questions for Bill?
Thank you, Bill.
Yep, thank y'all.
I do one quick question. So Bill, based on I guess this will have to rely on the Black and Veatch to check this out, but based on what we found here, do we know that there are other weak spots in the system as a result of this? This could be on the edge of?
Well, we are going to look at, obviously, the piping under the station because there's several lines associated with the way the pumps are routed and the discharge and the suction side. And we're also going to look into possible fixes. And when I say that, the equipment in the station to perhaps prevent this from happening again in the future. There may be some different operational setups that we could use that could maybe prevent this.
Sure. Good. Thank you.
I've got a question. How many pump stations do we have similar to this one?
Similar to this one, there's only 3.
Okay.
Well, there's 7 total, and they're all similar in some way. The 3 that I'm talking about don't have a tank associated with them. They're just standalone pump stations. The other 4 have actual tanks associated with them.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bill. Thanks for that update. And with that, I will turn it over to Mike Stover and we'll do a water and wastewater update.
Thank you, Bill, and good afternoon, commissioners, and happy Valentine's Day. So far this fiscal year, we've issued 23 water and sewer conveyance agreements, totaling about $6.8 million. This next graph, you can see the breakdown in water and sewer mileage. About 5 miles of water mains and 3.5 miles of sewer mains. And then we'll look at rainfall data. We've been lucky recently. We had a very dry summer and fall, and we got about 4 inches of rain, in January. So Forsyth County is not under any drought conditions right now. Middle part of the state, abnormally dry, but Forsyth County is in good shape. Water production, we are very close to our 5-year average. We actually produce more water, about 1 MGD, 1 million gallons per day more than we did at this time last year, for a total of 33.6 million gallons per day in January. Again, received almost 4 inches of rain the month of January. The average over the past 14 years is 2.8 inches. Water quality sampling at our 3 water plants, almost 27,000 samples in 1 month. We fielded 26 water quality calls and had 0 drinking water violations for the month of January. Collection system update. The only report that we've received since we met back in December was October. We received 1 notice of deficiency, 3 notice of violations, and 0 to intend to enforce letters. We're still waiting on November, December, and January's reports. Got some good news here with sanitary sewer overflows. You can see where we're tracking compared to 2020 and 2021. We are still well below, and just a reminder for the group, 2020 and 2021 were both record years as far as lowest numbers on record. And right now we're tracking below both of those. So hopefully we finish out the year strong and set another record. And this graph shows SSOs by cause. We had 6 for the month of January, which is pretty close to the 5-year average trend line. 2 of those are classified as other. One was related to a contractor mishap. The other was a bypass pump failure. There were 2 pipe failure related SSOs and 2 O&M related SSOs. Cleaning productivity, we're still well above our 10% permit requirement, still tracking below the 20% goal. That goal is set to keep up with our scheduled cleaning requirements in order to avoid a backlog. As I mentioned in previous months, the vacancy rate, is contributing to that gap, both internally and with our contractor crews as well. Financials, got some good news here as well. More of the story, we are spending less than we budgeted for and collecting more revenue than we anticipated. So through January, we have spent $25.7 million, and we were budgeting around $30 million at this time. And from a revenue perspective, we've collected $74.6 million, as opposed to around 70 million is what we were projecting. Here's the past due balance history. It went slightly up in December, but it's starting to come back down. I think the programs that Courtney mentioned early on in the meeting are starting to make an impact. We'll continue to monitor this, but as far as total past due balances, we're looking at $3.7 million.
Hey, Mike, on the previous slide, you said the words collecting revenue. And I guess, is that correct? Or is that what the 74.7, did we bill that and we're still missing this 3.7? You see what I'm saying? Do we collect 74.6 or is that our billed revenues and we've got 3 point something that hasn't been paid?
I do see what you're saying with that. This is my first month presenting the slide. I can get clarification. I think that is billed. I'm not sure if that's collected.
No, I would, yeah, I think it is billed.
Yeah, Ricky.
It is billed revenue.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it, Ricky.
Cool. Thank you.
And then the delinquent accounts, this kind of follows that same trend line as the past due balances. It went up slightly in December and started to trickle back down in January. We're just shy of 12,000 accounts that are delinquent right now. Any questions for water and wastewater updates?
Yeah, one more on that last slide, Mike, and just remind everybody that we probably have what, about 130,000 total accounts?
That's correct.
Have about 130,000 connections, and then some of those, some accounts might have multiple connections, but 130,000 connections.
Yeah. So just point of reference, so we roughly 10% of our, maybe 11, 12% of our accounts are delinquent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, Tom, I got a question. We apparently, in looking at delinquent accounts, we're at about 12,000 versus back in May, it was a little over 13,000. But if you go back one slide to the amount of the balances, you'll see that the 12,000 or 3.7, but the over 13,000 were 2.9. Are we, these folks carrying bigger balance due? Is that what? Obviously they are, but
yeah. I don't think the number of accounts, the balances went up.
Any understanding from anybody as to why that might be going on?
Yeah, I'll answer this. So I don't know that we have a good answer for that, Mr. Griffin, but we've always, even pre-pandemic, you always have some past due balance. You always have some delinquent accounts.
Sure.
We actually talked about that earlier or last week about going back before the pandemic, because what we're showing you here is kind of the beginning, May 2020. And so really we need to stop, we talked about, okay, well, when do we want to kind of start cutting this off and start our new snapshot? And Ricky's going to pull together some information to really start or really comparing what our numbers are now to what they were pre-pandemic. Because we just really need to look at that now that hopefully we're starting to get on the other side of this. So we'll probably have a better answer for you next month on that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I had a question too, just real quick. When you're talking about past due debt balances, that wouldn't mean like somebody just didn't pay it last month. That's when you've already gone through the process, if you know what I'm talking about. That includes long-term past due balances?
Correct.
I got you. Thank you.
Anything over 60 days.
Thank you,
Thank
Lisa.
you very much.
Okay, I will turn it over to Jan.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll start with the overall financial picture. So far through the month of January, we have spent $4.1 million. So we are trending below the budget and a little bit behind where we were last year. It was about 4.2 million last year. And revenues in the next slide are at 7.3 million. So those are trending similar to the water and sewer side of things, above the budget and ahead of last year as well. Looking at the tonnage that we've taken in, the municipal solid waste tonnage at Haynes Mill Road landfill, we've taken 168,777 tons. So we're ahead of last year and ahead of the budget. But in the next slide, you see it's been a really interesting year, the variation that we've seen this year. December was exceptionally high, probably because we closed Old Salisbury Road landfill and took in some of that waste at that site, at this site. And in January, we saw an extremely low month, largely due to weather. We think that was the winter weather that we experienced and the reduced customer activity we saw. We show you the yard waste tonnage probably twice a year or so, so you get some feel for what's going on at those facilities. Most of this year, we followed along with the budgeted expected numbers. As winter approached, we have dropped down below the budget. So we've taken in 18,206 tons at those two facilities. That's a very seasonal waste stream, so we would expect to make up most or maybe all of that ground. And we could easily finish the year at the budgeted tonnage or above it. So in conclusion, just a couple of miscellaneous updates, and then I can answer any questions you might have. We mentioned the snow, the winter weather events we had in January, and we had to close one day. We did have reduced activity several other days. So we had reduced tonnage and revenues due to that. And the weather also has impacted our ability to do some of the site maintenance and repair work that we had planned. While Old Salisbury Road landfill is closed, we had hoped to catch up on some of the site maintenance. So that's been delayed a little bit. And as Courtney has mentioned, Old Salisbury Road is still closed. We extended that and we plan to evaluate our staffing situation over the next couple of weeks and should be able to target a date to reopen that facility, hopefully in March.
Jan, have you had any complaints from the contractors and such that's not available to them? They're having to travel farther?
You know, surprisingly, I have not. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people that are impacted, but we really have not heard a lot from those customers. And we are seeing increased activity at Haynes, so I think they are bringing a lot of the waste to that site. It's just that the weather was so bad in January, everything was reduced. I think construction activity as well as other waste hauling activity.
Okay, thank you.
So lastly, I just wanted to give you a quick preview that we plan to have HDR attend next month's meeting so they can give us an update on the permitting progress towards the mechanically stabilized retaining wall that would expand the vertical capacity at Haynes. So we'll give you an update on what's going on with that in some detail next month. I think that's everything I had prepared, unless you have questions about any of it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'll present the agenda items. So we do have 11 items, and the first, let me flip to the next slide. So the first item is approval of minutes from our December meeting. The second item is a resolution authorizing execution of various agreements regarding proposed water and sanitary sewer improvements to be installed within various developments, with no refunds. There are 11 total projects with the estimated water cost to be conveyed to our system at $844,500. And the estimated sewer cost is $1,710,830. Okay. Item number 3 is a resolution authorizing acquisition of a water easement by donation for the Merffield Village Waterline Extension Project. So this subdivision has private utilities, and they extended a public water line that they designed to our standards, and now they have conveyed it to us for our maintenance and for our system, and now they're donating the needed easement so we can maintain the infrastructure.
Courtney.
Yeah.
Do those water lines meet our standards?
Yes, sir. Yes, they do. It was permitted through our plan review process program, and it does meet our standards.
Is this the time for questions, Courtney?
Yes, if you have any questions as I go through it, yes.
Okay, you said that the utilities in the subdivision were private. Was that just sewer, or is that water and sewer? Is it?
So it was water and sewer and streets. And so they have, if I remember correctly, this subdivision has wanted us to take over their water line for some years, but it did not meet our standards. So we had said, no, we cannot take it over. So they ended up extending a new water main per our standards. And so we have accepted that. The sewer is still private. The streets are still private, but there will be, this resolution authorizes this water easement for us to be able to get in there and maintain our infrastructure.
Which road is it? Where is our line in this subdivision?
So Todd Lewis.
Yeah, if you can look at the map here. So basically, there was an older private system through there. The short section off of Mayfield was ductile iron. The rest of it that led into the development was plastic. It had multiple issues. Ramey Incorporated did the initial installation, and they also were the contractor and installed the new line. So the majority of the new line was placed within the pavement. That neighborhood, you've got a lot of homes that are fairly close to the road with a lot of improvements with trees and everything else. So as a part of the project and improvements they did within the neighborhood, there was a water main, there was some drainage work, and they completely redid the private streets. They repaved them. So the new mains are within the street.
So did they replace all the mains, Todd?
Yeah, all the water mains were replaced. With exception, there was a short stick off of Mayfield, maybe about 150 feet that remained.
Okay.
But the rest of it was replaced.
I misunderstood. I thought we were just extending one water line in the subdivision, but we actually went in and they've paid to replace every water line in the subdivision to our standards.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the acquisition of easements by deed, condemnation, or dedication for phase 1 of the Peters Creek outfall replacement. So this is an outfall that has reached capacity and it's not sized for wet weather flows. So it was identified in our CSIP program and as needing to be replaced. This resolution authorizes easements for that project in the total amount of $17,925.
Courtney, Tom, is the replacement the same size as the old line?
No, the replacement will be a larger size due to capacity.
Well, we just got through listening to planning telling us we need to be, so I'm just making sure. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay. Item 5 is a resolution authorizing acquisition of easements by deed or condemnation for phase 1 of the Spragged Neighborhood Sewer Rehabilitation Project. This was also identified in our CSIP program. This area is in need of extensive sewer rehab based on the condition assessment that was performed. And this resolution authorizes the acquisition of easements in the total amount of $14,035 that are needed for this project. Item 6 is a resolution awarding a contract to CITI for software configuration and programming services, closed circuit television and access control system upgrades for the Nelson Water Treatment Plant. CITI is our preferred integration vendor. They were selected through an RFP process. They have done similar work at all of our other 4 plants, facilities at Muddy Creek, Swan, Thomas, and Elledge. And so now we have requested that they do similar work at Nelson in conjunction with our modernization project. So we negotiated a fee with CITI for $1,007,820 to do this work.
Hey, Courtney, this is Chris. And this may be kind of a question for Bill Brewer, 2 questions. And I remember going over to see the new project that we were going to be doing about a year ago, what was proposal. And I was thinking that the estimate was 108 to 110 for that renovation and upgrade of Nielsen. And there were a few things in order for us to get that price and range that we did not include in that estimate. So my question is, was this included in the original estimate? Or was that outside of that original estimate? And number 2 is maybe if we can get an update on how that project is going.
Okay. Bill, do you want to answer those?
Yes, so this was one of the items that, sorry, I'm having trouble on my camera. This was one of the items that was an ad alternate that we declined to get the number within the budget that we had at the time. So that hopefully that answers your first question. The second question is actually things with this project are going very well currently. Ulam and Shooty has been very responsive. They seem to have a very qualified and professional staff. So at the moment, you know, I'm very satisfied with how things are going. Did that answer both your questions?
Well, yeah, it did. And I'm just kind of wondering if we were planning on doing this, why did we exclude that last year?
Well, it was so that we could accomplish.
Mr. Parker, it was an exercise to get us back within budget. The Nielsen project, we had only appropriated $121.87 million. And by the time we back calculated engineering, fees and construction administration fees and construction, we had to cut some cost. And since we had done this same work at the other 4 plants through another capital project, rather than paying Oldham and Shooty a markup when they had to use CITI anyway, we decided to pull that work, have that as a standalone work like we've done in the past, coming out of water treatment upgrades project. So it's funded from a different source.
And what I'm hearing from you is it was less expensive to do it the way we're doing it.
Correct.
Okay. All right, if there are no other questions, we'll go to item 7. Item 7 is a resolution awarding a contract for residuals removal and land application at Nelson Water Treatment Plant. So our purchasing department issued a request for proposal to provide pricing for residuals removal and land application from the lagoons. And there were 3 vendors that submitted. The terms of this contract, it's a 1-year contract with option to extend 2 additional years if both parties agree and funds are available. The panel selected EMA Resources as the selected vendor and in the amount of $80,000 per year. And if we extend for 2 additional years, the total value would be $240,000 for this work. Okay. Item 8 is a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds to cover the cost of certain utility expenses related to the concrete street replacement project. This project is being funded by the 2018 bonds. So it's for the removal and replacement of concrete streets that are causing maintenance issues. Construction on Arbor Road, which is one of the 5 streets included in this contract, began in June of 2021. It became apparent that the water mains within the project limits were in poor condition. The contractor had to deal with inoperable valves. There were lead joint pipes. We had a lot of leaks. And since all the water lines in these 5 roads were installed at the same time, it is recommended that we go ahead and replace the water line in the other remaining streets before they go through and put down new pavement. So the contractor has provided a cost estimate to replace the remaining water lines in the total amount of $1,863,900.
Hey, Courtney, this is Chris. This project, when we were doing our capital project planning previously, was this something we had on our radar, or did this just come up once this bond project on this concrete streets that got into it, and then they saw we needed to do something?
I'm looking at on my screen at Mike Stover. Do you want to answer that one?
Our water distribution system upgrades program is set up to cover water main replacement, hydrant replacements, valves, anything water distribution related. And we leave, money in there for contingency for anything that comes up throughout the year. So this one wasn't specifically identified when we presented it last March, but we did have funding available in there to cover this work.
So we had enough in contingency to cover this?
I wouldn't call it contingency. We had enough available to cover the replacement of these mains.
Okay.
This is Charles Wilson. Do we know if there are any other concrete streets where similar issues like this might be unearthed, or are these 5 basically the only ones that were cause for concern?
I don't know the answer to that. I would assume there are more. This is the package that DOT, city DOT, and engineering have worked together to package up.
Okay.
Yeah, and typically, Mr. Wilson, we try, and it's not just concrete streets, if there's a paving project and that the city has, and we know that there's known water or sewer issues, we try to go ahead and address those before they repave a whole street, because the worst thing, the citizens, they don't like to see us paving a brand new street and then we have to go out there immediately after and fix some kind of issue. So we really do try to coordinate efforts when there's any kind of resurfacing project. And if there's a need, now there always may not be a need to rehab the infrastructure, our water and sewer infrastructure. But if there is, if we have data that shows that there's a need, we'll go ahead and try to do that beforehand.
Okay. Yeah. I just didn't know if there was, a period in time when using concrete was kind of standard, and if there might be other streets built around the same time as Arbor that might have similar water main issues.
I'm sure there probably is, but I don't know that off the top of my head. But I'm sure there is.
Okay, thanks.
But I think, according to the point is what drives this is the city DOT's decision to upgrade the streets.
Correct.
So I think to answer Charles' question, the next time they're doing work on these concrete streets built in the same time frame, we'll do the same exercise here.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, so we are on item 9. And there's a map for that. Okay, so item 9 is a resolution awarding a contract for the Kernersville Sewer Rehabilitation Project. So bids were received for this project in May of 2020. At that time, the bidders were instructed to submit separate bid pricing for 3 work packages based on geographical location. So there was a package A, B, and C. The commission awarded package A to KRG in June of 2020. And at that time, this was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we didn't know what our financial impact was going to look like or how that would, what that would be. So we didn't want to commit ourselves to, spending major capital dollars when we didn't know exactly what we were getting into. So now we have a better outlook, and KRG has agreed to perform the work at the previous bid prices. So what we are recommending now is to move forward with package B and C with KRG, and that amount would be $5,312,000, $312,341.26, and $270,000 be available for contingency if needed. All the remaining specifics of the contract would be the same as they were in 2020.
Courtney, do you have anticipated completion dates for section B or that portion, and for section C?
So I do not have that. I know we've been working in section A, and that's almost complete, if not complete. So I don't know how long B and C will take. Shane, do you remember or recall what the time frame is on those other 2 sections?
I would imagine probably around the same as, well, B's a little bigger. So I think we started at Kernersville in Kernersville took about almost 2 years, so possibly a little bit longer than that would be my guess.
Okay, thank you. Those folks have done a very good job of handling themselves around town, by the way.
Yes.
Well, and I know our Kernersville customers have been very patient with us as we work through that area. So, and so we definitely appreciate that.
Hey, Courtney, it's Chris. I've got a question on funding. It seems like Kernersville had a reserve fund to do improvements. Is this coming out of the Kernersville Reserve Fund, or how does that work?
No, so this would come out of excuse me, our normal operations. So basically, this is existing infrastructure that is part of our system, and we maintain it. The Kernersville Reserve Fund is more for new infrastructure that they want to build for any new development.
And more economic development, Chris, typically.
Okay, and so this, obviously we voted on this previously, and this was part of a long-range planning in the budget.
Correct.
This gets funded out of the CSIP program, Mr. Parker.
Okay. And some of these questions, Courtney and Randall, I'm asking because Harold is kind of new, trying to get his hands on all these different types of sources we have.
No, I'm not buying that, Chris. These are wonderful Chris Parker questions. I'm joking.
Well, I would ask him regardless, but I just want to kind of keep in mind as we bring new members onto the board that we try to help educate them as we come along on stuff.
I'm with you 100%. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so I think we're at item 10, And item 10 is a resolution approving a change order with KRG Utility. So in February of 2019, a contract was awarded to KRG to provide water meter box adjustments or replacement and water service connection repairs that were needed. The initial contract period was through June of 2019 with as many as 4 additional annual extensions. We're currently on our 3rd annual extension, and it became necessary to increase quantities to meet an increasing demand of work. So the city manager, under his authority, has already approved 1 change order in the amount of $90,000. And we estimate that we need an additional $250,000 to continue the work through the remainder of this fiscal year. And so this resolution is to approve a change order for $250,000. Again, it's just the amount of work that we need. We're out there with the AMI project. We're finding more things that need to be addressed. So that's why there's a bigger demand. Okay. And our last item today is a resolution requesting that the City Council of the City of Winston-Salem accept the North Carolina Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Loan for the Nelson Water Treatment Plant Modernization Project. This resolution is requesting that the City Council accept a re-amended loan from the North Carolina Drinking Water State Revolving Fund in the amount of $100 million. This one started initially as $40 million, and we have applied each year for additional funding. So it started as 40 million, then it was re-amended to 60 million, and then 80 million, and then now we just got approved through the local government commission for an additional 20 million. So basically, the LGC formally approved the City of Winston-Salem eligible to receive the re-amended loan in the amount of $100 million for a term of 20 years and 1.02% interest rate at its December 7th, 2021 meeting. As a reminder, go ahead.
Courtney, this is kind of a fine line here, but as we look at item number 6, would that go against this loan? Or is that handled separately?
Yeah, that would be handled separate. Well, I'll let Lisa answer that. Lisa, what he's asking, item number 6 is for the integration services with CITI. So it's also for Nelson. And this loan is for the Nelson Modernization Project. It's $100 million. So I guess maybe walk through how you pull those funds for the project.
Well, good afternoon, commissioners and Mr. Parker. So the 100 million, Courtney, is for what has been budgeted of the 121 million. So is item number 6 part of the budget of the 121 million, or is it outside that? Then no, it is outside that. That would be funded through just city's normal pay-go in cash, or the utility fund's normal pay-go in cash.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome.
And I guess I wanted just to remind you, we've had this funding mechanism on several of our projects, but the interest begins to accrue from the date of the project completion, and repayments begin between 6 and 12 months after project completion, and there is a 2% closing fee, 2% of the loan balance. So, any questions? Any questions on any of the items?
This is Courtney. This is Wesley, and this is probably it is getting to the weeds. But on item number 10, what can you give me an example of some additional things that you encountered that we're having to add cost to? Just as is it you just found that the pipe was bigger, or there was more nuts in it than you thought it was, or what kind of just?
Yeah, I think so. This is for anything in the system. And so anytime a box needs to be adjusted or replaced or repaired, anytime there's a water connection that needs to replace or repair, we use this to fund that. And we use this contractor to help us. So now that we're out there in the system more doing AMI and replacing it, we're finding more things. So, we may have a leak that or we may get
Ah.
out there and there's like deteriorated pipe when we
I
have to
got you.
replace the meter. And
I
so
got you.
we call in KRG to help us, reconnect that connection.
I got you. Okay.
Mr. Curtis, a perfect example. We're changing every meter in the system.
Mm-hmm.
If we get out there, we find a lead service connection.
Mm,
We immediately renew that to our, current standard.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
That's a good example.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Courtney. Any other questions on agenda items 1 through 11? And
If
then
not-
I was just going to explain to Harold when we're in person, we vote on these item by item. But in the Zoom world, we typically handle things as a consent agenda. So either I would entertain a motion to consider agenda items 1 through 11 under consent agenda, or if any need to be pulled, we can pull that item and discuss it separately.
I move we consider them items 1 through 11 in total.
I second that.
All right, that's Mr. Long and Mr. Parker. Any discussion on the motion at hand? Okay, we have a motion and a second. It is time to vote. Beth, you still with us? And can you do a
I
roll
am.
call? Roll call, please.
Chair Randall Tuttle.
Yeah.
I can't
I'm
vote.
sorry, Vice Chair Wesley Curtis.
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Day.
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Eustache.
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Griffin.
Yes.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines.
Yes.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan.
Yes.
Commissioner Dwayne Long.
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Parker.
I concur.
And Commissioner Charles Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Randall.
It passes. So, Courtney, I guess we're going to talk capital improvements. Is that correct? With
Yes,
Shane?
I think we got a few more minutes and I'll let Shane go ahead and she's got a few slides for you. Let me share again.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all had a good weekend. First up is the Nielsen Water Treatment Plant Modernization Project. The notice to proceed was issued September 15, 2021, the final completion date of May of 2025. So far, excavation for the EQ Basin is ongoing and the chemical building demo will begin this month. I think I missed a picture there, Courtney.
I don't know. Let's see. Let me go back.
Where did the picture go?
No, well, it somehow got out of the slide.
Oh.
So
Okay. It was a very nice picture. I apologize. All right. Northwest water intake bank stabilization. The contractor is KBS Earthworks. The notice to proceed was given in November. So far, they're still waiting on materials to be delivered. The material shortage is it's delaying a little. Water main improvements. The amount spent to date is a little over 1.5 million. This project should be completed very, very soon. In March next month, I believe. Yes. Okay. No, you're fine. So here is the picture to the left is the pipeline installation at Angel Road. And then the picture to the right is a new hydrant that was installed at Woodbine Street. And here you can see the progress map for this project. They are still working in Kernersville. The little yellow lines is what they're currently working on. Green is what's been completed, and the red is what's left. System-wide sewer rehab phase 3. The contract amount was a little over 3.3 million. They had finished the Arbor Road and they have started rehab work on High Point Road. And here you can see the project boundary, the map. The 3 green stars is Arbor Road and the yellow star is High Point Road. System-wide sewer rehab phase 4. We've used about 50% of our contract time. So we've started rehab work on Corona Street and Granville Road. So far, we've done approximately 3,600 linear feet of rehab. And here is the project map. It's a little all over. So the red dots is what we have to complete. So the green is the work we've done and the yellow is what we're working on. And here, the picture to the left is KRG getting ready to do a pipe burst. You can see the burst head to the left on the ground and the new pipe. And then the picture to the right is KRG came out and helped us put the sleeve on when Tanglewood Force Main was leaking about 2 weeks ago. I think this is the last one. Avonlea, Martin Mill, Lowry Street. Our contractor is Baker Underground. We've used about 60% of our contract time. All of the Avonlea lift station upgrades have been completed and they've started work on Lowry Street. It should be done in March. And here you can see pictures of the completed Avonlea lift station. You can see the generator sitting there. Are there any questions for me? Happy Valentine's Day. Oh,
Thank you, Shane. Well
Hey.
done as always.
thank you.
And I'm not sure if this is a question for you or for Mike Stover. I'm kind of wondering, where do we stand on our fire hydrants? Are we keeping those within a certain number of days that we're getting those fixed if we get any reports from the fire department or, from an accident that they need to get repaired? I know I may be putting you on the spot on this, but kind of where do we stand with fire hydrants? It seemed like a while ago we were starting to get rather behind on them, and then we started putting some more attention and we started catching up. But where do we stand recently?
Mr. Parker, we're currently on the 3rd hydrant replacement contract. I really can't remember exactly how many we've done, how many are left, but we have substantially knocked that backlog down with these contracts. And usually what happens, once we get enough backlog to create another project, we'll come to you guys with hydrant replacement contract number 4. We've been trying to keep that window down to less than a year. We're doing probably better than we ever have, but people can't drive, they hit them every day.
Okay, well, I'll just say this. I know quite a number of people in the fire department. So if they start talking to me about any issues, and I guess, Mike, you're the one I need to reach out to with those.
Yes, sir. Just send them our way. That they do a lot of their hydrant testing and flowing in the spring. So usually in the spring, we get a whole slug of work orders coming in. And but yeah, any issues, send them my way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney, anything else from staff?
I think that's all we've got for you today.
All right, thank you. Well done as always. Any member of the commission like to bring anything in front of the commission? All right, thank you all. Well done, Courtney and team, and thank you for the updates, both from the Bill Brewer side and everything on the water and the fire, and then of course Kirk's presentation on planning was quite interesting. So thanks in advance, Courtney, for sending that around.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I'd like to make a motion. It's time to go back, do something else.
Okay. We have a motion for adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Broom, one more time.
Okay, Vice Chair Wesley Curtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Eustache,
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Griffin,
Affirmative.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines, Commissioner Yvonne Hines, you're on mute.
He said yes.
You
Ye-
say-
Yes.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Dwayne Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Parker,
Agreed.
Commissioner Charles Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great week, and thanks again for all you do for this wonderful organization in our community. Have a great
Wow.
afternoon.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
Thank you.
Good job, Courtney.